Section of our presentation deals with Amazon not providing a safe work environment for its employees. In the last 3 years, there have been more than 600 accidents, and the stakeholders that are affected by these accidents are mainly the employees and the shareholders who are losing their investments. Now, multiple complaints promote an investigation led by the parliament about the warehouses of Amazon. Yet, Amazon denies a problem with their work conditions. And Jeff Bezos, the CEO, even stated that he's proud of their working conditions. Now, if we look at the matters that we've discussed in class, we can see that there is a huge issue with business ethics. Companies have responsibilities towards their customers, their employees, and their investors. Now, Amazon is failing to provide a safe working environment, and they're exploiting their employees. If you look at the matter from a human resources perspective, we can see that the worsening brand name could result in less recruitments in the future, and these issues have a lot of impact on employee morale. If you look at the financial markets, we can see the huge drop of the stock prices of Amazon since February 19th, but we have to also add that stock prices are volatile and multifactorial, and coronavirus has impacted the market a lot in recent days. We can also generalize that Amazon should take action immediately, since issues like this stick to the brand name, like Nike, and their issues with child labor, which is a matter that's been settled 20 years ago.
As one of the largest ride-sharing platforms out there, Uber has a history of unknowingly engaging in price gouging through their surge pricing feature. It is an algorithm implemented within the service that automatically raises the price when there's an increase in demand. The stakeholders that are involved in this issue would be Uber's employees, shareholders, as well as its customers. First of all, shareholders and employees that work for Uber as a driver are the ones that benefit the most from this dynamic pricing strategy, as they're now able to extract much more revenue than before. As for the customers, they're the ones that are being negatively impacted the most, as they felt that it was highly unfair to them. Many customers also saw it as an unethical way for Uber to profit off of natural disasters when demand greatly exceeds the supply. A notable example of this would be back in 2012 when Hurricane Sandy appeared in the US. Customers had to pay as much as 7 times the regular price just to get a ride. The topic of business ethics was also touched upon, as Uber has to decide whether surge pricing is ethical, especially when price gouging is illegal in many countries. It is true that price discrimination through surge pricing allows Uber to maximize their revenue and benefit both shareholders and employees. However, Uber has to take into consideration that their customers felt that it was an unfair and unethical business strategy. The topic of microeconomics was also touched upon, as Uber's controversial surge pricing feature was simply Adam Smith's invisible hand in action. Uber is simply making the market for riders and drivers as efficient as possible by offering dynamic pricing so that those with a higher willingness to pay are able to get a ride first when the supply for drivers are low. As one of the largest companies in the world, Apple emitted approximately 25.2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide in 2018. As part of their 2019 environmental goal, Apple introduced its environmental-friendly robots that can disassemble iPhones and reclaim reusable materials in order to reduce the company's overall carbon footprint in the coming years. The stakeholders involved in this case would be the shareholders and the general public. First of all, the shareholders are the ones that would be negatively impacted the most, as there is a high research and development cost involved in the creation of a recycling robot capable of sorting, disassembling, and reclaiming reusable materials. Due to the increased expense, this project may disappoint some shareholders. As for the general public, they're the ones that Apple is trying to appease. By reducing Apple's carbon footprint and reusing materials, this would positively increase Apple's overall reputation and public image as a leading innovator in the technology space. Similar to other technology companies in the space, Apple is trying to reduce the waste that comes from consumer electronics, particularly Apple products. It is Apple's goal to eventually have a closed-loop system where mining for metals and other materials are no longer necessary. So the topic of corporate social responsibility was also touched upon, as Apple needed to decide whether spending additional money on the creation of the recycling robots are worth it in the long run. Apple sees it as their duty and responsibility to take care of the environment by recycling back what they've produced. The topic of green marketing was also touched upon, as Apple knows that the younger generation, which are the main target audience for Apple, are also environmentally conscious. By being an eco-friendly company that promotes Apple products that use recycled aluminums and other reclaimed materials, Apple is able to create a positive brand image and further increase its reputation in the space as an innovator.
The coronavirus outbreak started in early 2020 in Wuhan, China, and is still spreading all around the world. China is one of the largest manufacturing economies in the world. One of the most affected industries is the technology industry, and more specifically, the Apple company is severely affected by it. Apple has stopped its operations in China, but it doesn't stop there. There are other stakeholders at stake, and it will affect more than the Chinese economy. This affects Apple as a whole. As you can see from this image, that in the last 5 days during the coronavirus pandemic, that the stock prices of Apple are very volatile as they're fluctuating. And these price changes are not small and overall show that the downwards going prices. This will disappoint investors. Apple was planning to launch iPhone SE2, which will most probably be pushed back, and their new 5G iPhone technology will also be delayed. Apple workers and the company as a whole will be impacted. When stores close in China, there can be layoffs and wage cuts. But as they close the stores in early stages, they showed that their priority is the health and safety of their customers, supply chain partners, and communities in which they operate. The Chinese government will be negatively impacted as more cities in China are being locked down and more businesses are being shut down. Their economy will be more likely to go into recession and in the long run have a weaker currency. There will be chaos and people will want to stock in things in the short run, but we'll have a slow market in the long run because of demand and supply in China. But on the other hand, the gaming industry and the e-commerce industry will be affected positively as people will switch their demand. The impact of the virus is amplified by China's importance to the global supply chain, as a result of which Apple faces both supply and demand problems.
2 years prior to the US federal elections, hedge fund billionaire Robin Mercer and the owner of the company Cambridge Analytica stole information from 50 million Facebook users who are of voting age to advertise for the Republican Party in the upcoming elections in 2016. This was done through Alexander Kogan, an academic who designed a program that would survey users and collect information about their participants and their Facebook friends, which then he sold to Cambridge Analytica. There was not enough evidence to support the claim, nor was there any awareness of the matter until whistleblower Christopher Wiley, who was a former research director at Cambridge Analytica, came forward and shed some light on the matter. The biggest issue with this case is corporate social responsibility and business ethics. Even Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg came forward and apologized for Facebook's shortcomings and has since terminated their partnership with Alexander Kogan and his software. The stakeholders who were negatively impacted were vastly the general public, who had their information stolen and abused in ways that they did not consent to. Secondly, it was Facebook itself that was harmed by this. As shown here, when the issue was exposed in the media in March of 2018, Facebook stock prices went down and slowly rose back up, but then when their earnings, for their quarterly earnings statements was released in August of 2018, their stock prices plummeted as their cash flows were significantly lower than they normally would have been because users did not feel safe using Facebook and therefore the company was not doing well.
Beginning of September and still continuing throughout December 2019, wildfires, particularly bushfires, have been occurring and burning a big portion of Australia, destroying land, property, and wildfire. More than 30 people have been killed, 1 billion animals have died, and more than 3,000 homes have been burned down. The cost of the bushfires has been estimated at $2 billion and can climb even further. Those who have not been killed from the fire are now left homeless. Over 27 million acres of land has been destroyed thanks to the wildfires. This case study has many stakeholders, including the Australian government, businesses, and consumers. The Australian government has to spend millions of dollars on repair damages of the fire and will increase their fiscal spending. They also have to cover medical bills and reconstruction of the area. The fire harmed different sectors of the business industry, including Australian farming and tourism. Professionals in the tourism industry say it will cost at least hundreds of millions of dollars to rebuild. Goldman Sachs Group Inc. sees immediate economic hits to private investment in farm production. At stake is the country's 28-year run without a recession, the longest ongoing streak in the developed world. According to economists, damage to fresh produce will put upward pressure on consumer prices, given that almost fresh fruit and vegetables consumed at home are sourced locally. The cause of the wildfires in Australia were caused by climate change. In 2019, Australia had an alarming heat wave mid-December, reaching its hottest record with 41.9 degrees Celsius. To avoid such situations in the future, Australia needs to tightly regulate laws favoring the environment.